Welcome to Secret Story. Since you won't believe me, I won't tell you that this is a true story and that the names have been changed to protect the not so innocent. As is usually the way, the wedding ceremony was an absolute bore. My wife's cousin, having finally persuaded her unfortunate fiancé to put a ring on her finger, had done everything possible to make sure her moment in the spotlight lasted as long as possible. My boredom grew by the minute as the production grew ever more elaborate, and pretty soon I had stopped paying attention altogether. My eyes wandered across the rest of the congregation. There were certainly plenty of attractive women here to admire. They were, of course, all dressed up very nicely, hair and makeup just so, outfits carefully selected. Competing with each other, and with the bride, without doing so too obviously. They all wanted to look good today, they all wanted their share of the attention, they all wanted compliments. And why not? Good for them. Most of them had few enough excuses to make such an effort, and I, for one, was most appreciative. Of course, my appreciation would remain unspoken, but still it was there. I have to admit that my wife Jennifer looked really good too, and I had told her so as we left the hotel earlier. She's lost a lot of weight in the last year. Best of all, she was wearing, for the first time, the rose-pink sandals I had bought for her the month before. They were stunning, very high, but the pretty color and the delicate straps made them elegant rather than tardy. I love the way high heels make a woman look, and these not only made her look taller and longer-legged. I'd seen them on sale as I walked through a department store, and couldn't resist. I knew she'd look great in them. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't like to indulge my little shoe fetish. You're supposed to find me attractive, not the shoes, she always complained when I asked her to wear footwear. And so, they had remained in their box ever since. Until today, mischievously, she had opened the box and strapped them on rather slowly and seductively this morning. Better late than never. I'd thought to myself, not wanting to push the issue, I'd just told her that she looked very beautiful. She thanked me and told me I looked good too. And so, yes, I was instinctively admiring the other women there, and, since I was in church, doing so with that delicious combination of guilt and exhilaration that Catholics feel when irresistibly drawn to doing something they know they shouldn't. But it's not like I was wishing I could be with any of them. Jennifer looked great to me. I made a mental note to tell her so once she'd had a glass or two of wine. It would turn her on. At least, I hoped it would. At long last, the wedding ended and we filed outside. The bride continued her preening, posing for photographs. Throwing the bouquet, kissing every last member of the congregation and so on. Jennifer, indulging her newfound interest in photography, took my camera from my shoulder and wandered off to get some shots, presumably for purposes of boring disinterested people silly at a later date. Meanwhile, I stood vacantly, glancing at my watch occasionally, enjoying the warmth of the sun and looking forward to a cold beer at the reception. My mother-in-law, Janet, suddenly appeared at my side. She and her husband Greg were staying at the same hotel as Jennifer and I, the same place the reception was being held, so we'd all come together in my car for the service. Now, Janet is a walking contradiction. Having just turned 50 a month ago, she is still very attractive and exercises every day to maintain her shape. And yet, despite all that, she is very straight-laced in a lot of ways. Deeply religious, a pillar of the community. She visits the elderly. She arranges flowers in church. She wears a crucifix around her neck, and rubs it gently when confused or stressed. A walking contradiction, and here she was beside me. We exchanged the usual pleasantries. The bride looks beautiful, we said. The weather is glorious, we said. It was. We were looking forward to dinner, we said. We were. And Jennifer's looking so great these days, isn't she? Asked Janet. She really is. I agreed. It's a great outfit too. I love those shoes she's wearing. They're gorgeous, and what an unusual color. Yes, they're great. I replied, a little offhand, as if I'd not really noticed. The last thing I needed was an embarrassing conversation about my predilection for footwear. You men are so lucky, she went on, not having to totter about in silly shoes all the time. I mean, look, they're hardly practical, are they? She indicated her own feet. She too was in heels, in this case black sandals over bare feet. She often wore heeled shoes, but I'd never seen her in anything quite so high before. And here she was inviting me to have a good long look that I wasn't about to pass up the opportunity. It seems strange to say in retrospect, but this was genuinely the first time I'd felt. But, as I looked at her legs and feet, here I was. And I was most definitely thinking such things. Not that he notices. Janet was still talking that I realized I'd been staring at her shoes and feet for rather a long time, and hadn't been listening to a word she said. Sorry, not that who notices? I asked. Greg, of course. I always try to look nice, and he never even notices. I think they look great. Your shoes, I mean. I think you look great. In them. She looked up, surprised at the stammered compliment. I wondered for a second if I'd gone too far. Somehow she broke into a wide smile. Thank you, Steve. That is so sweet of you to say. You've quite made my day. You're welcome. I replied, simply, smiling back. Our eyes met, each gazing silently at the other. It probably only lasted a second or two, but it felt meaningful, as if we were assessing the other, maybe searching for an answer to an unspoken question, maybe trying to reassure each other. Something. Janet dropped her gaze first, looking a little flustered. Anyway. Yes. Anyway, yes, her shoes look great. I wonder where she got them, she spluttered. Oh, I can tell you that, I bought them. She didn't even like them that much at first, but I thought they would look good. Ah, so it's you who has the great taste in shoes, is it? Perhaps you should take me shopping one day. Be my own fashion consultant. I tried and failed to think of a response that neither discounted the possibility, nor sounded too openly flirtatious. Sure, said quietly and hesitantly, was the pathetic best I could come up with. Janet looked at me again, a little quizzically, and then broke back into her beautiful smile. Come on you, she said, gently laying her hand on my arm, looks like they're almost done here. Let's round up the others and go get a drink. Good idea, I replied, let's do that. Having found my wife and her father, we all walked back to the car together. Jennifer and I hand in hand, Janet and Greg walking ahead of us. Time and again I told myself to think of something else. That this wasn't going to happen, and thinking about it did nobody any good. Yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. Back at the hotel, the reception was only a little more entertaining than the wedding itself. I was at a table with some terribly dull people, and their irritating children. They were friends of the groom. Jennifer sensed my irritation and gave apologetic smiles every so often. I did my best to keep the conversation going, but it was hard work all the way. Perhaps fortunately, my in-laws were placed at a different table, somewhere behind me, and I could neither see nor hear them. I permitted myself a slight smile at the thought of it, earning a quizzical look from Jennifer. I just said I would explain later. Which, of course, I didn't have the slightest intention of doing. Then, after the meal, the interminable speeches. I was considering myself lucky that at least I was staying in this hotel, didn't have to drive, and could at least enjoy a few drinks to make the evening go a bit more easily. Finally, by around 6 o'clock, we were excused from our tables and could go and relax a bit in the bar while the hotel set up the room for the evening's disco. I found a comfortable sofa. Jennifer plunked herself beside me and we were soon joined by her uncle and his 2 teenage sons. They were much, much better company. I was laughing and talking more, relaxing with a drink in my hand and feeling hugely relieved to have survived the worst parts of the day. I caught a glimpse of Janet, talking animatedly with her sister, a glass of champagne in hand. Strange as the feeling had been, remote as it now seemed, my arousal had certainly been real. A shadow of it remained. A flicker. Is that okay, Steve? This was Jennifer. Once again I'd been caught out staring at Janet and not paying attention to what was being said. Sorry, babe, what was that? I need to change, these shoes are killing me, I can't possibly dance in them, oh you know what I'm like. My face obviously gave away my disappointment, and I got a conciliatory smile in return. She leant in close and whispered, I'm sorry. If you're good I can put them back on later, when we go upstairs. That sounded promising. And I kissed her on the lips. Of course. Sure, you go ahead and change. I might grab a quick shower myself in a bit, put on something a bit cooler. Alright sweetie, you want to come up with me or stay here for now? You go ahead, I'll keep your Uncle Gordon company. See you in a bit. She kissed me and excused herself. I watched her go and, as she left the room, I felt my gaze move instinctively back to Janet. Janet, who was looking directly back at me. Who was walking over to me. She wasn't talking to me, wasn't looking at me, she was talking to her brother and nephews. But something in her body language made me feel she was communicating something to me, flirting with me. She was flirting with me. Without saying a word. Did she even know that's what she was doing? I wasn't sure. Maybe this was all in my head again, an overactive imagination, an overactive libido. Be careful, I reminded myself. Be very careful. I tried to remain casual, taking part in the conversation, laughing along with their jokes, even as I felt myself inch slowly closer to her, by tiny degrees. Trying to look relaxed, I'd shuffle slightly in my seat, repositioning myself to be more comfortable. But really I was trying to move half an inch closer. I was flirting back. Did she know that too? Of course. The peculiarly wonderful thing about the situation was there was no fear of getting caught. But this was her mother. This was my mother-in-law. Of course there was nothing flirtatious there. Any such thoughts would be laughed away as soon as they entered the mind, and, sure enough, my wife did come back a few minutes later. And, far from objecting to me sitting so close to her mother, she even gave a satisfied smile when she saw us. How lovely to see you two getting along so well, was the unspoken message. Jennifer sat on the sofa too, but not beside me, at the other end, leaving Janet in the middle, beside me, closer than ever. Although space on the sofa was limited, I was sure she didn't need to be quite so close to me. I was sure she was choosing to be careful, I said to myself once again. My mind and heart racing, I was finding this hard to take and needed some space. I'm going to grab a quick shower, guys. Just before the disco starts, if you'll excuse me. Of course baby, take your time, replied Jennifer. The others said they would see me after, all except Janet, who remained silent, a peculiar and amused smile on her lips. See you soon, then, she finally said with eyebrows raised, eyes wide, smiling lips. I stood and walked to the stairs. A few minutes later, and I was in the shower, the bathroom full of steam from the scalding hot water. Wash it all away, I told myself. These silly thoughts, wash them away before they get you in trouble. Well, it's a funny thing with thoughts. The more you try not to have them, the more insistent they become. Asking myself to not think about Janet, about how she looked, about how she had looked at me, how she had sat close to me. I may as well have asked myself not to breathe. Then paused. I'd heard something. Listening carefully, there was somebody in the bedroom. I looked at the door, breathing a sigh of relief that I'd locked it. Hi babe, you alright? I called through. I heard her reply but couldn't make out the words. Sorry, can't hear you, let me finish up, I'll just be a sec. Everything alright babe? I thought you were staying downstairs. I asked, about to walk back through to the bedroom. It was Janet's voice that replied. It's not Jennifer, she stated simply. I kept the bathroom door closed. Janet? Are you alright? I asked. I'm fine. Okay good. Did you need something? Well you could say that. She's so hard to read. Her replies were light, easy, but not giggly or openly flirtatious. What to do, what to do? I'd paused too long. Are you going to stay in there all evening? She teased. I opened the door a little and looked around it, but couldn't see her. She must be over by the bed, I thought. Thinking fast, I stepped quickly into the passageway and grabbed the white dressing gown from the wardrobe opposite, keeping my back towards the bed. There you are. Her voice behind me as I shrugged on the gown. I tried to laugh lightly in reply, but my mouth was too dry. No, I'm fine. How are you doing? What was it you needed? Well, I decided I needed to change too. And I thought that come and see for yourself. What was she up to, I wondered. I saw her black heels lying casually discarded at the foot of the bed, and felt a strange little disappointment. I was hoping she'd still be wearing them and I could enjoy looking at them a little longer. She was wearing a different dress now, a dusty pink color there, she said, straightening up again. What do you think? What do I think of what? I asked, playing dumb. She looked momentarily disappointed, and I felt a peculiar pang of guilt. It was obvious she had been hoping for a compliment. Oh, your outfit. Yes, very nice. So you came to borrow Jennifer's shoes? Yes, she said I could wear them since they're too uncomfortable for her. Her voice was quiet, she still seemed slightly disappointed, as if this wasn't going quite as she expected, as if she'd expected more of a reaction from me. Ah, I see, I replied, more upbeat. Well, let's have a proper look then. Sorry, do you want me to put some proper clothes on? Oh no, don't worry about that. Oh, Jennifer gave me her keycard by the way, she told me as she stood up from the bed. What a strange thing to say, I thought. Was she just telling me so I would remember to retrieve it from her and give it back to Jen? Or was she telling me that we wouldn't be disturbed? As I pondered this, she had stood up and was standing in front of me, barely a pace away, looking at me expectantly. Janet gave her charming wide smile again. I guessed the look in my eyes told her that I approved. You look really great, Janet. Really great, Janet gave a little girlish giggle now. I hoped you would approve, she said. She hoped I'd approve. Not wondered if I'd approve, or thought I would approve, she hoped. She wanted me to. And oh God, I did. I needed her to know that. And I needed to know what came next. I do. Very much. So, I asked, trying to sound natural and calm, did you come to borrow shoes, or see if I approved, or a bit of both? She head to one side, looking me right in the eye. With an amused look. My guess was she was as curious as I was. She didn't know what came next either. Neither of us wanted to make the next move, but at least we both know we were playing a game. It just wasn't completely clear what game it was. After a moment's thought, she replied. Well, a bit of both I suppose. I thought the outfit would look better with these shoes, so I came to borrow them. And I knew you liked them because you bought them. And I bet you're a bit disappointed Jennifer took them off. So I thought you might like to see me wear them instead. I thought maybe you'd like me to wear them for you instead. She spluttered a little over the last sentence. She was nervous. Saying she was wearing them for me was the most obvious move yet, the most obvious statement that she wanted to look good to me. I paused, not knowing what to say or do next. But I had to play the game. If that was to be my prize, I had to play the game and I had to play it carefully. Janet looked at me steadily, waiting patiently to see how I'd react. She could leave and go back downstairs. And we could both carry on as if nothing had happened. We could even kid ourselves that nothing but a normal conversation had passed between us as she came to borrow my wife's shoes. Is that what she wanted? So, I began hesitantly and immediately dried up. So. She replied, with a crooked smile. With no intention of letting me off the hook. So, do you want to go back downstairs, or did you want to wait here with me? I mean, I still need to change and things. A pause, a beat, a breathless moment passed. She motioned for me to sit on the bed. I sat on the edge of the bed, halfway down its length, turned slightly towards her. If I stood up again, it would fall, she would see how hard I was for her, and there would be no turning back, whatever happened. She wasn't smiling now, she looked that I wasn't sure, nervous. Excited? With satisfaction I realized I knew what that look meant. I knew exactly. She sat down too, at the pillow end of the bed. Space between us, still. Steve. She began. Yes. Jennifer said to tell you. She said to tell you that she was going to walk around the grounds for a while and take some pictures. She said she'd be about an hour, not to worry about her, she'll see you downstairs when she gets back. I see. She was looking at her feet. They are nice shoes, aren't they, Steve? They're beautiful, Janet. Thank you, Steve. Are you glad I put them on? She smiled a little now. That's better, she said mysteriously. She was moving her feet slowly, rotating and stretching her ankle a little. I was shaking a little. My mouth was dry. But we were looking each other steadily in the eye. This wasn't the same as her resting her hand on my shoulder anymore. And we both knew it. You know, Steve, Janet said, it just seems to me like today, like we're helping each other in a funny way. Can I ask you something? Of course. You bought these shoes. You wanted Jennifer to wear them for you. And she did, but then she disappointed you, she took them off again. That's true. And now that I'm wearing them. For you. Yes, Janet, thank you. And you look great in them. So what is the question you wanted to ask? Well, I wondered. I wondered. It's embarrassing to ask, but do the shoes do they turn you on? Yes, Janet. I do. Is that for me? She asked. It's all for you, Janet. A pause. I wondered if I'd spoiled everything, if she had accepted this in her mind as a one-off when Greg's out golfing maybe. I asked, we could have some fun of our own. The smile on her face broadened, she liked that thought a lot, apparently. A long silence, neither of us knowing quite what to say. Finally, I decided humor was the only way, the best way to make sure she didn't get scared and bolt. Janet, I began. She replied quietly. I think you should wear high heels more often. She laughed softly, paused for a moment. Would you really like me to? Yes, Janet, I'd like you to wear them. For me. Then I will. For you. We'll see about that. And we'd better go. They'll come looking for us soon. I'd like that, I nodded, adding with a wink, oh, and you'd better check with Greg if he's golfing next weekend. She smiled as she climbed off the bed, perhaps already knowing that he was. Or perhaps she knew I wouldn't have to wait anything like that long. Just 3 hours later, back downstairs, walking back from the bar, bad music blaring from the speakers, bad dancing and spilled cider all over the dance floor, my phone buzzed with a text. From Janet. Again, it said, simply. I looked up, across the room. She was sitting between her husband and her daughter, looking directly at me.